So what we have in front of us today is, well, it's a challenging map. It's one that tries to connect some of the deepest, darkest secrets of government history and that kind of thing.
Right, how they maintain their grip to how all of that programming shapes us on the inside, through our own psychological traps. And then, and this is the critical part,
The core thesis here seems to be that the world is, in some ways, intentionally designed to keep you a little confused, a little compliant.
but the flip side of that, the empowering
The ones who perfected these systems of deception.
Well, when we talk about systems of deception, it's not just, politicians bending the truth. We're talking about manufacturing a reality to meet a specific goal.
And one of the clearest, most shocking examples from the source material has to be the Gulf of Tonkin incident, August 1964.
Oh, it's a textbook case. It was the foundation for the U.S. escalation in Vietnam.
Right, so President Johnson gets these reports of a second attack on the USS Maddox. He uses that alleged attack to rush to Congress.
And he pushes through the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. This gave him incredibly broad war powers. He could basically commit forces without a formal declaration of war.
And the really critical part about that second attack, the one that justified a decade of conflict,
It never happened.
it never actually happened.
Exactly. And this wasn't some huge secret that took 50 years to uncover. Declassified NSA documents from 2005 confirmed it was a phantom. The commander on the ship himself sent a follow-up cable saying it was probably, and I'm quoting here, freak weather effects and over-eager sonarmen.
But that cable got buried.
It got buried. The need for justification was more important than the truth.
And Johnson himself, in private, later joked that the Navy might have been shooting at whales out there.
The casualness of it is what's so chilling. That kind of shadow operation really points to a deeper, more structural issue, the existence of a sort of permanent government that operates outside of accountability.
We see that again in the 80s with Iran-Contra.
Absolutely. The operation was selling missiles to Iran, which is a hostile nation, and then funneling the money to the Contras in Nicaragua.
Which Congress had explicitly forbidden.
Explicitly, the Boland Amendment. So when that came out, it just laid bare this shadow foreign policy running in parallel to the official one. 14 people were indicted, most were pardoned later, but it shows you the system will find a way, legal or not.
And for that kind of control to work, you can't just manipulate events. You have to be able to erase the evidence. Which brings us to Project MKUltra.
Yeah, the CIA program, horrific domestic human rights violations, testing mind-altering drugs on unsuspecting citizens. But what's really terrifying is how successful they were at covering it up.
We only know what we know because of misfiled documents.
Misfiled financial documents, that's it. We have maybe 10% of the story. The rest of the evidence, detailing one of the worst domestic abuses of power, was just successfully purged.
So to keep that control, you also have to suppress dissent. And maybe the most effective weapon they deployed wasn't a drug. It was a linguistic trick. It's in CIA document 1035960.
Right. This was the strategy to counter critics of the Warren Commission, the official Kennedy assassination report. Instead of arguing the facts, the CIA developed a plan to weaponize language.
They decided to label critics as conspiracy theorists.
And then use their assets in the media to push the idea that if you question the official story, you're a crazy person with wild ideas.
It's what's called a thought-terminating cliche.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
brilliant in a sinister way. You don't have to engage with the argument. You just apply the label and the conversation stops. Critical thinking just shuts down. It's a discrediting tool.
So if we connect that history of deception to today, the sources suggest that the systemic dysfunction we see everywhere, in healthcare and politics, it's not a series of mistakes.
It's not a bug, it's a feature. The chaos and the confusion, they are designed to preserve the hierarchy, the profit structures.
It keeps you busy, keeps you chasing small solutions, filling out forms, instead of ever questioning the foundation of the broken system itself.
And that gets to the personal cost of just going along with it. The sources argue that the more you conform, the more you obey, the more invisible you become. You're standardized, replaceable, easy to discard.
So that obedience isn't safety.
It's camouflage. And that sets the stage perfectly for the internal part of this. If the world is designed to keep us confused, how does that programming take root inside our own minds?
It starts with these psychological traps we build for ourselves.
The first one is the illusion of progress. We're taught that activity equals growth, that busyness is achievement.
The hamster on the wheel.
Yeah.
You're running fast, but you're not actually going anywhere.
Precisely. And we pair that with the comfort cage. The familiar, the predictable, it feels safe. But that cage of comfort limits our potential. We trade growth for ease.
And the root of so much of this, the core cognitive trap, is that we treat our thoughts as facts.
1,000 times a day. A thought is just a mental event, an electrical signal. But we treat it as objective truth.
Like when you get nervous before a presentation and the thought, I'm not good enough, pops into your head.
You treat that as a real assessment of your abilities, not just an anxious little brain fart. And that's what chains us to these self-imposed limits.
Okay, so if our inner world is being fed all this confusion, how does our mind actually process it? This is where we get into the concept of the servo mechanism.
From Maxwell Maltz. He was a plastic surgeon who realized the human nervous system works just like a guided missile. It's an automatic control system, a servo mechanism, and it's always aimed at a target.
And it uses everything it has, creativity, energy, to hit that target.
But here's the crucial part. It doesn't judge the target. It's non-judgmental. If you program your self-image for success and health, it steers you there.
But if you constantly rehearse failure or rejection,
it locks right onto that target too with the same precision. So if you feel like you're failing, you aren't broken, you're just misaimed. Your guiding system is working perfectly. It's just hitting the negative target you've given it.
And it operates on vividness, not just logic.
Vividness and repetition. Those emotional scars we carry. They aren't maintained by the original event. They're deepened by the mental replays, right now in the present.
It's like walking the same path in a field every day. Eventually, you carve a trench.
Your mind is doing the exact same thing, which means to change course, you have to change the self-image. But that, according to Carl Jung, is messy work.
Jung talks about acknowledging the shadow, everything we don't want to be, our defects, our flaws.
And we try to bypass that with just, positive thinking. But Jung said real progress requires the suffering of defects, not pretending they don't exist. You have to make the darkness conscious to integrate it.
So if the mind is this obedient mechanism running toward a target, the solution is to get into the control room and change the coordinates.
And that brings us to the reprogramming toolkit, specifically the Silva method.
The goal here is to access the ideal state for that programming, which is the alpha brainwave state.
Right, that's between 7 to 14 cycles per second. It's the bridge state between the conscious beta state and the deep subconscious of theta. It's where you can speak directly to that servo mechanism.
And there are specific physical steps to get there. First, find a quiet place, sit comfortably, close your eyes.
And here's the weird little trick. Look upward behind your closed eyelids at about a 20-degree angle. That subtle eye position alone starts to prompt the brain to shift into alpha.
Then you use the countdown method.
For the first week or so, you slowly count backward from 100 to 1, about 2 seconds per number. You're conditioning your mind.
You're training it to associate that countdown with deep relaxation. And you shorten it over time. 150, then 25.
All the way down to just 5 to 1. The goal is to get to a point where you hit the number 1 and you're instantly in that deep alpha state.
And this allows you to create an instant trigger.
A physical cue, like touching 3 fingers together. You practice it for about 30 days while you're in alpha, and eventually that physical anchor becomes a shortcut. No countdown needed.
So once you're in that state, the real work begins. The dynamic meditation or the mental video technique.
And José Silva found that moving the mental image to the left subconsciously signals a desired future to the mind.
Okay, so the technique uses 3 scenes. Let's use an example like overcoming procrastination.
Perfect. Scene 1 is the present reality. You have to see and feel the pain of your current situation. Feel the stress of the deadline, the shame of being stuck. You actually want to exaggerate the pain to create motivation.
Then scene 2 is action. You move the scene about 15 degrees to the left. Here you see yourself taking one small corrective step. Opening the file, writing 1 sentence.
The baby step. The moment of choosing action over inaction.
And finally, scene 3, another 15 degrees to the left, is the end result. You see the project finished, you feel the relief, the accomplishment, the praise. You live in that positive emotional state.
And it is absolutely critical here to focus on the what and the WHY, the end goal and the feeling. You do not get attached to the HOBU. You let the servo mechanism figure out the logistics.
And there's a kind of built-in ethical guardrail to this process, isn't there?
There is. The alpha state only supports constructive, positive goals. If you try to use it for what Silva called an evil design, like trying to give someone a headache,
you'll either snap out of alpha or you'll get the headache yourself.
Your mind's own integrity system just rejects it. The applications are incredible, though. Overcoming addictions, healing skin conditions, improving performance in sports or business. It just shows the line between mind and matter is, well, it's very blurry.
Okay, so we've covered a huge amount of ground here. We've traced the external architecture of control, from the Gulf of Tonkin to MKUltra.
Showing that the world around you is constantly being shaped and managed, and then we brought it inside, to the mind, as this obedient servo mechanism, which will relentlessly pursue whatever target you give it.
So the big synthesis here for you, the learner, is that the future belongs to the versatile, to the polymaths, who refuse to be defined by a single path.
Yeah, the people who see no barriers between disciplines. They can connect history, psychology, and mind mastery because they see it's all part of the same mechanism of creation and control. In this day and age, versatility is the most valuable currency.
So we'll leave you with a final choice, a synthesis of two very different ideas. Machiavelli taught that the fundamental driver in life is necessity, which is really the unlimited acquisition of power and glory.
And on the other hand, Earl Nightingale said that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
You now have the tools. You understand how to get into the control room of your own mind and program that incredibly powerful servo mechanism for deliberate, relentless acquisition.
So the question is, what worthy ideal will you choose? Will it be knowledge, health, purpose, or will you let that mechanism just run on its old programming toward the path of least resistance? Will you command it toward greatness? Think about that until the next deep dive.
Let's get right into it. We're going to explore a feeling that I think so many of us share. This nagging sense that something in our world today is just fundamentally off. And that leads to a really crucial question. Is the power to change things out there in all the world systems? Or is it closer to home, inside the system in our own heads? I mean, does this hit home for you? It really does for me. We were promised this incredible world of progress, of opportunity. We have more information, more connection, more everything than at any point in history, and yet, so many of us feel completely trapped by it all. And that right there, that's the core question we are digging into. Is this feeling of disconnect just some kind of bug in the system? A personal failing? Or could it actually be a deliberate feature of the world we've all inherited? Okay, let's talk about that feeling, the invisible cage. We have more convenience than any generation before us, but we're also seeing these record-breaking levels of burnout and loneliness. It's this wild paradox, isn't it? We are literally surrounded by modern miracles, but somehow we've just become more numb.
Just think about it. Think about the modern grind. It feels like the world has been built around an economy, right? Not around humanity. We're basically conditioned to work, spend what we earn on things we need to keep working, and then get right back to work again. It's this endless cycle of production and consumption that, well, it can leave very little room for actually living.
So the point is, this feeling isn't just in your head. There are real external systems, governmental, corporate, media structures that have been designed over time to shape how we all think and behave. So let's take a look at how some of these systems were actually built.
Systemic deception, it's really not a new thing. As you can see from this timeline of events, all of which are now declassified, by the way, the official story has often been manufactured to achieve very specific goals. We're talking about everything from influencing the media to justifying entire wars. It's a clear pattern that proves what we're told, well, it isn't always the whole story.
Now, what's really fascinating is the philosophy behind these kinds of actions. There's this concept from Machiavelli called effectual truth, and it basically argues that for people in power, what matters isn't the promise or the morality of it all. What matters is the practical outcome. The result is the only truth that really counts.
And that brings us right up to today, where the tools of control are just way more subtle. Language itself gets weaponized. For instance, there's a 1967 CIA memo that actually advised popularizing the term conspiracy theorist just to dismiss anyone who dissented. Algorithms keep us outraged because anger drives clicks and engagement. And we're given this illusion of choice, endless products to buy, which is a great distraction from the lack of real freedom in the actual structure of our lives.
So if the systems we live in often feel broken, if they feel inefficient, stressful, confusing, just consider this for a second. Maybe they're not broken at all. Maybe they're working exactly as intended, designed to maintain control by keeping us scrambling for solutions inside the cage they built.
Okay,
That was a pretty heavy look at the external systems. But now we're going to make a huge pivot. We're going to turn inward to the internal system, the one you actually have complete control over. This is about the power you've always had.
This simple sentence is what a guy named Earl Nightingale called the strangest secret. It's this simple but incredibly profound truth that has been repeated by thinkers for centuries. The things you focus your mind on, day in and day out, will eventually become your reality. It is the fundamental law of our own internal operating system.
And this is just a brilliant way to illustrate that concept. Your mind is like a garden. It's fertile soil, and it doesn't care what you plant. It could be success or failure, a clear goal, or just total confusion. But whatever seed you plant, whatever thought you let take root, it will grow and return to you in abundance.
Nightingale's research found this absolutely startling statistic. Out of 100 people who start out at age 25, all believing they're going to be a success, only 5 of them actually make it by age 65. And the single biggest difference wasn't talent, it wasn't luck, it wasn't their background. It was that the successful ones had clear, defined goals. They knew exactly where they were aiming their mental energy.
So, okay, how do you actually harness this power? Well, here's one practical technique. It's from the Silva method, and it's for entering a super-focused meditative state that's known as the alpha state. It's really just a method for deliberately shutting down all the external noise so you can direct your mind, your internal system, toward a very specific outcome that you want.
And ultimately, this is the big takeaway. Your mind is this vast source of power and energy. You can either let it run wild, controlled by all the external chaos, or you can grab the wheel and direct that incredible power toward a specific, worthwhile purpose.
All right, so now we have these two powerful, competing realities, right? The external system that is designed to control you, and the internal system that you can learn to control. So, where do you put your focus?
This is the choice, right here. Do you focus on the brutal reality that power's first instinct is always its own survival? Or do you focus on the optimistic view that the future is ultimately built by those who can imagine and work toward a better one? The tricky part is, both are true, in their own way. But maybe the answer isn't choosing one reality over the other. This concept of protopia offers a kind of middle path. It's not about achieving some perfect, problem-free utopia. No, it's just about making things 1% better today than they were yesterday. It sees the world's problems, sure, but it frames them as opportunities for slow, steady progress.
And this is really where we land. Yes, absolutely, the external world is filled with complex systems trying to influence how you think and act. Acknowledging that isn't paranoia, it's just awareness. But the single most powerful system you will ever encounter is your own mind. And that is the one system you can truly, truly master.
So the final question really is for you. Every single day, you're faced with two powerful systems. One of them seeks to program you. The other, you can learn to program yourself. Which one is going to get your focus? Which one will you choose to master?